Hello everyone, I am Sammy, your devoted manga otaku, and welcome to my manga space. Today I will be discussing all the manga I read in the month of September. Sorry about this video being a little late in the month. I'm actually recovering from a cold and I had to wait until my voice was back before I could film. Now, before I jump into the reviews, I just wanted to acknowledge that my channel hit 800 subscribers. Thank you to those that have subscribed to my channel, watched or liked my videos, left comments, or even shared my videos via Instagram. I'm so grateful to you, and this channel wouldn't be where it's at without your support and your engagement. So thank you so much. Also, I have a feeling that this is going to be a long video because I've read quite a bit of manga this month and I always seem to have a lot to say, so feel free to jump around via the timestamps. And with that, I invite you to grab a coffee or other beverage of your choice and let's talk manga. The first series that I'm going to talk about today is volumes 1 through 5 of the completed shoujo series Imadoki Nowadays by Watase. When I first started this channel, it was a goal of mine to reread my older manga, but I haven't been, so I decided to change that. I chose Imadoki because I couldn't remember anything about it, and it's a short series. It turns out that this Viz Media publication follows a country bumpkin named Tanpopo, who moves to Tokyo from Hokkaido in order to attend the prestigious Mayo Academy, which is a high school for the rich and elite of society. On her first day, she recognizes Koki, a boy she accidentally hit with her bicycle the day prior. He seemed like a kind boy. He was nurturing a dandelion at the time and showed the same care while bandaging Tanpopo's injury. However, now that classes have started, Koki refuses to acknowledge Tanpopo's existence and claims that he hates gardening. Hoping to win Koki's friendship and the friendship of others, Tanpopo decides to found a gardening club. This was a cute manga, and I liked that it includes some mature subjects like suicide and teenage pregnancy. Watase sensei mostly skims over the gritty details of those topics, but I remember reading this as a teen and being surprised that those subjects were included at all. With that said though, I don't find this story very remarkable or memorable. It has a lot of cliches, making some parts of this story really predictable and boring. I found it unnecessarily dramatic at moments as well, especially in parts of the last volume. The translation had some issues. Some things just didn't make sense how they were written. I thought that the humor was good for the most part, and the romance was sweet. I really like that it teaches important values about friendship. Most of the people Tanpopo befriends have warped understandings of what friendship is before meeting Tanpopo. I wasn't a huge fan of the ending. It was really lackluster, and the last two chapters were side stories. One was about Tanpopo's friends in Hokkaido, and the other was an unrelated story, and I just didn't care for either. I would have rather had more of the main story, or have those stories be about Tanpopo's Tokyo friends. As for the characters, I felt that both Koki and Tanpopo were pretty bland in the personality department. Tanpopo is your basic shoujo heroine. She's friendly, energetic, carefree, and a little annoying. And then Koki is your standard shoujo love interest. He's aloof, handsome, popular, and kind of rude. Overall, I felt both the main and side characters were one-dimensional, but the side characters were more interesting in my opinion. Particularly Arisa, I felt like she was the most distinctive character of the bunch in terms of personality and backstory. Oh, and I love Poplar? Yes, I love Poplar, Tanpopo's little fox pet. He's adorable. So cute. I absolutely despised the antagonist in this series. She reminds me of Shiori from Mars, just a spoiled, bratty, entitled rich girl. Her entire character was unnecessary, and I hated her selfish temper tantrums. They caused the dumbest conflicts. The manga would have been so much better and so much more enjoyable if her character was just omitted from the series. Lastly, I have to mention something really weird and strange that happened in the second volume, because it really bothered me. Tampopo gets sexually assaulted by someone and then befriends that person 10 minutes later, and no one else involved ever mentions it again, and it just really rubbed me the wrong way. You'd expect some kind of conflict, but it doesn't happen, and I did not like that. Now that I've read this, I sort of remember my first experience reading Imadoki when I was a teenager, and I liked it way more back then than I do now. I'm going to give this series 2.5 stars. The art was okay and it had some nice moments, but there's just nothing special about it. There's no spark. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this to anyone, but it's not terrible. I've definitely read worse. Up next, I'm going to share my thoughts on Volume 3 of the Yen Press publication, Mint Chocolate by Mami Orikasa. What did I say again at the end of my Volume 2 review? I'm intrigued to see if the romantic cliffhanger at the end is a misdirect, or if Orikasa sensei is giving readers exactly what they want. I'm 99.9% sure that the cliffhanger is a misdirect, but a girl can dream. Guys, my dreams came true. Orikasa sensei gave me what I wanted, and I'm so ecstatic with the direction of this story. The whole time I was reading this, I was just tickled pink. For those that don't know, Mint Chocolate follows Nanami and Kyohei, 2 high schoolers that both secretly have romantic feelings for each other. To their surprise, their parents announce they are getting married and merging both families under one roof, forcing Nanami and Kyohei to navigate their feelings as step-siblings. I'm not going to spoil anything for people who haven't read this series or read this volume, but I will say that the romance ramps up in this installment. This manga is so unbelievably adorable, and I'm in love with most of the events in this volume. You also learn more about Kyohei and his feelings and his perspective, which give his character a new level of depth. Now, an issue I'm starting to have with this manga is that I'm not invested in anything but the romance. I don't really care about any other aspects of the plot. There's a new character that seems to want to sabotage Kyohei and Nanami, and I'm not really enthusiastic or intrigued, but I've pre-ordered the 4th volume, so we'll see how it plays out. At this point, I just don't care. And I think part of the problem is that the writing is sort of lacking sometimes, although it is improving with each volume. My star rating for this particular volume is 4 stars. I'm really happy with where this is going, and I'm excited to continue the series. The next couple manga I read this month were volumes 1 and 2 of the Josei series Yakuza Lover by Nozomi Mino. Published by Viz Media, this steamy romance follows Yuri, a college student who is tired of wasting her time with boys who refuse to take her seriously. While at a party with a friend, the girls accidentally stumble into a room full of drug pushers and criminals. Yuri is attempting to fight her way out of that situation, but despite her bravery, oh yeah, the underboss of a Yakuza syndicate rescues her. The two lock eyes for a moment, causing an irresistible and unforgettable bond to form between them. So far, I'm really enjoying this series, but I know it's not going to be for everyone. I don't think you're supposed to take this too seriously. It's just supposed to be fun, a fun and sexy read. Speaking of sexy, this manga is very smutty and steamy and very well drawn. However, it does have some cringy moments. I had to put the book down a couple times and just take a moment. But overall, I found this series entertaining. The first volume isn't really plot heavy, it mostly just introduces the characters and the romance, while the second volume was more interesting in that you get to see the dangers of dating a Yakuza underboss. When I first started reading this, I thought the romance was very insta-love, but now that I'm looking back, I think that it makes sense for the story and the characters. Yuri is constantly reminded that Oya could die at any point because of his job, and Oya never wastes time because he never knows how much time he has left. Their relationship reflects the sense of urgency they both feel, and sharing what little time they could have left becomes really important to them. As for the characters, I'm sure it's no surprise that Oya is my ideal josei love interest. He's powerful, sexy, wealthy, he's a crime lord, but he also has a soft and loving side. He's unquestionably devoted and committed to Yuri, and I love how he's always spoiling her with presents. My heart always skips a beat when Yuri does something cute and Oya just sort of sits back and looks at her and sort of just soaks it in. It's like he's constantly reminded of why he loves her, and it's just really, really cute. With all that said, he's still a Yakuza underboss, so when the moment calls for it, Oya is protective, violent, and a total badass, which makes him even more attractive, in my opinion. I respected that he was honest about his dangerous lifestyle and gave Yuri time to decide what she wants. Yuri is okay, I guess. I'm kidding. I actually really liked Yuri's character. She's headstrong and isn't afraid to voice her opinions or stick up for herself. I'm hoping the narrative is going where I think it's going with Yuri. I really want a sort of Daenerys Targaryen type story where Yuri starts to embody her role in the Yakuza and as Oya's partner. I want to see her become powerful and respected. Overall, I'm giving this series 4 stars, but depending on where the plot goes, I could see this becoming a favorite guilty pleasure of mine. If you love smutty, escapist romances featuring sexy and powerful crime lords, this could be the manga for you. Another fantastic josei I read this month was volumes 1 through 7 of the Kodansha publication Perfect World by Rai Aruga. I purchased this series because the premise sounded intriguing and I was excited to see and read a manga about a person who uses a wheelchair. This touching romance story follows Sugumi, a woman who reconnects with Itsuki, a man she used to have a crush on in high school, and finds that he suffered an accident that's left him paralyzed and wheelchair-bound. The series follows both characters as they embark on a journey of self-discovery, romance, and acceptance, while facing uncertainties, difficulties, and doubts as a couple and as individuals. One of the most interesting themes addressed in this manga is disability. From the very beginning, it's clear that Aruga sensei deals with the subject matter in a respectful way and doesn't sugarcoat or romanticize what it's like to live with disability. Itsuki doesn't have an excessively positive outlook on his disability, and although his accomplishments are admirable, we see his internal struggles and insecurities. We see him mourning the life he had before his accident, and we see how he worries about being a burden to his loved ones. We also see the daily struggles, the physical obstacles, and the health concerns associated with his spinal injury. Additionally, the manga explores being in a relationship but also caring for someone whose disability requires it. The manga also spotlights the cruelty and prejudice disabled people may face sometimes, and I teared up many times watching people treat Itsuki as if he were less of a person because he uses a wheelchair. Overall, I feel this story approaches disability in an empathetic and realistic way. However, I would also like to note that I'm fully abled and can't actually know how someone with physical disabilities would feel. This manga serves as a small stepping stone into my own educational journey. With all that being said, I do want to address a criticism I have, which is that the conversations surrounding Itsuki's disability sometimes sound rehearsed or forced. Sometimes I felt like characters are just listing facts versus having meaningful and natural conversations about Itsuki's health. Another criticism worth mentioning is that I feel like the story has been going around in circles for the last few volumes. I'll admit, I was starting to feel a teeny tiny bit annoyed and frustrated because I was yearning for a resolution or some closure, but after the thrilling events of Volume 7, coupled with an exciting cliffhanger, it looks like things will be picking up again in Volume 8, so I'm excited for that. Lastly, I want to briefly mention that there isn't as much romance as I would expect from a josei romance series. The story just isn't romantic enough for my tastes, and I hope we get more romance in future volumes. As for the characters so far, I've enjoyed watching our protagonists grow and develop into stronger people, and it's been inspiring watching them work towards their dreams. I'm excited to see the development of the main character's relationship, and I'm intrigued at how things will progress after what transpired in the last installment. In conclusion, I'm rating this series 4.5 stars. I'm thoroughly liking this series, even though it makes my heart hurt sometimes. It's sweet, wholesome, and the illustrations are pretty. I'm eager to see where things will go from here. The next manga I want to talk about is volumes 1 through 3 of the Viz Media publication, How Do We Relationship by Tamifull. What drew me to this Yuri series in the first place was seeing people speak highly of it on Instagram, and after reading it, I can see why people are so fond of this manga. How Do We Relationship fashions an unusual romance between two college students, Seiko and Miwa. After a chance encounter during their first week of college, the two become instant friends and join a band together at a music club. After a drunken conversation, the girls discover that they're both gay, and with the lesbian dating pool being practically non-existent at their school, they decide to start a relationship of convenience. This manga continues to follow these women as they try navigating the ups and downs of this new romance and their developing feelings for each other. At first I thought this series was going to be a cute and funny story about two women falling in love after establishing a relationship together, but it's so much more than that. The series tackles a wide range of issues that real couples face in real relationships. It also touches on more serious topics such as discrimination, trauma after experiencing a public outing, and homophobia. I really liked the foreshadowing of the underlying issues and baggage that both girls are struggling with individually. It adds depth and complexity to their characters, and I find myself invested in how these women handle their conflicts and communicate with one another. I've grown rather attached to both Miwa and Seiko. They're both charming and quirky in their own way. Miwa is shy and timid and new to romantic relationships, while Seiko is open, brash, and experienced both emotionally and sexually. Even though the girls are polar opposites, I feel like they have a lot of chemistry and they make a really adorable couple. I like that the manga explores the side characters and their backstories too. It helps make the girls' friend circle feel real and authentic. Also, it's nice to see a friend group comprised of caring friends and allies who support Seiko and Miwa. The series is rated 16+, and there are some semi-explicit sex scenes, but it doesn't feel like fan service, and the characters aren't overly sexualized. Also, I liked seeing open and frank discussions about sex, as you don't see that in manga too often. I believe the art is really well done, especially with the character designs. Tamifull sensei has done a great job of making each character unique in how they look and their style. The characters' personalities really shine through in illustrations. Also, I love the little detail of Miwa always wearing different earrings. They're always so cute and stylish. So far, I've really been enjoying the mixture of humor, romance, and drama in the series. I think the characters are extremely likable, the pacing is great, and I appreciate the overall maturity of the story. I'm giving this genuine and emotional tale 4.5 stars. I've already pre-ordered volume 4, and I can't wait to continue this story. I just want to say briefly that if you guys hear background noise, that's my furnace kicking in and out. It is currently snowing outside here in Canada, so we need heat. Now let's talk about the graphic novel, The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jen Wang. I read this to my children over the course of about a week and a half. And wow, this is the kind of story that really just warms your heart while sharing beautiful messages about identity, being true to yourself, friendship, and acceptance. This charming Disney-esque fairy tale is set in late 19th century Europe and follows 16-year-old Sebastian, the crown prince of Belgium. Because he's a prince, Sebastian is destined to wed a princess and carry on his family's legacy, but he has a secret. He loves fashion and wearing dresses. Choosing to trust a designer who will keep his secret, Sebastian employs Frances, an incredibly talented but untested seamstress, who is unable to take fashion risks. Together, Sebastian and Frances become best friends while living secret lives. Sebastian taking on the alter ego of the Lady Crystalia, a fashion icon and sensation, and Frances designing daring and dazzling dresses without any restrictions. But when Sebastian's secret jeopardizes a tremendous opportunity for Frances and her career, things get complicated. Both my kids and I absolutely adored this book. It's a hopeful and uplifting story about celebrating people's differences, accepting people's gender identity, and standing up against discrimination and bullying. I adored the friendship between Sebastian and Frances and how it was built on trust and acceptance, and I like the lessons of supporting your friends and their dreams while also being mindful of how much you're sacrificing in the process. Even though there isn't magic in this fable, it's very down to earth, and watching these characters grow and evolve throughout the story was magical in itself. I thought both Sebastian and Frances were relatable human characters with realistic hopes, dreams, fears. I was surprised at how complex and in-depth they were for this being such a short book. I thought the illustrations in this were gorgeous. The backgrounds are detailed, the characters are cartoonish, but extremely expressive, and the color palette is beautiful. The dress designs are just breathtaking, and I loved each scene where Lady Crystalia reveals a new dress. I loved how some pages were without speech, but the art still conveyed emotion, and the actions of the characters were clear. The ending did make me quite emotional, and it was awkward trying to read this out loud to my kids while I was tearing up. I really loved the questions and conversations this graphic novel sparked between me and my kiddos. One of the first things my daughter said when she saw Lady Crystalia was, "Mummy, boys can't wear dresses." It was wonderful turning her statement into a positive teaching moment. Before I give my final rating for The Prince and the Dressmaker, it is important to mention that this contains queerphobia and a publicly forced outing scene. If that content is triggering for you, I would pass on reading this. Overall, I feel like Jen Wang has created a wonderful and touching story with delightful characters, valuable messages, and superb illustrations. I'm giving this book 5 stars, and I highly recommend this to both children and adults alike. Let's talk about a series I thoroughly enjoyed this month, and that's volumes 1 and 2 of the seinen horror comedy Zom 100 Bucket List of the Dead, story by Haro Aso and art by Kotaro Takata. When I started this series, I blew through both volumes in under 2 hours. I couldn't put them down. This highly entertaining Viz Media publication follows Akira Tendo, a college graduate who's excited to join the workforce. He lands his dream job at an advertising company and quickly learns his corporation was built on the backs of work slaves. Fast forward 3 years, Akira is exhausted, overworked, and unsure of how much more abuse he can take. So when waking up in the zombie apocalypse, Akira is ecstatic. He doesn't have to go to work and can finally start living among the dead. With his newfound freedom, Akira writes his bucket list of things he wants to do before turning into a zombie. As someone who's watched a lot of Walking Dead, this was a fresh new look at the zombie genre for me. I like that the zombie apocalypse is just the inciting incident for the manga, with the story actually focusing on the message of life being short, the importance of taking time for yourself, and doing things you enjoy. The zombies are like a metaphor for exploited Japanese workers, with Akira being someone who's breaking through that work culture. It's entertaining to see this positive spin on the zombie apocalypse and how Akira treats the zombies as a mere inconvenience to his grand plan of completing his bucket list. And speaking of Akira's bucket list, I loved that the apocalypse doesn't influence what Akira adds to it. For example, Akira puts skydiving on his list. How the hell is he going to skydive in the zombie apocalypse? I'm eager to find out because I hypothesize that by the end of this series, Akira is going to scratch off all his bucket list items no matter how impossible they seem. I think Aso Sensei does a wonderful job of balancing the comedy and horror. The manga is goofy and campy, but it works really well with the narrative and the characters. Some of the imagery is actually pretty scary, like this thing. That chapter was pretty intense and action-packed. I really like the artwork. It's crisp, detailed, and full of movement. Plus the characters are very expressive. Both the main and side characters in this manga are really fun and interesting. In the first volume, Akira connects with an old friend, Kensho, and in volume 2, they explore the city together, checking off items on the bucket list in unexpected ways. There's also an introduction of what I think will be a reoccurring female character. She's a calm and calculated risk analyst who is pretty much appalled by how Akira survives in the apocalypse. I'm really looking forward to seeing more of her, and I'm hoping she becomes a permanent part of the group at some point. Having said all that, I don't think this series is for everyone. It's fast-paced, there's partial nudity, gore, violence, and mild fan service, plus the humor comes off as immature at times. Personally, this is my type of manga and comedy. I like dumb, funny shit with heartwarming moments and tense, heart-pounding action. I'm giving this volume 5 stars. I've already ordered volume 3 and pre-ordered volume 4. I cannot wait to read more. The next book that I'm going to talk about is the latest installment of a series that I'm completely obsessed with, and that's volume 7 of the shoujo series Living Room Matsunaga-san by Keiko Iwashita. Now, it's been a long time since I felt this passionate about a series. The last time might have been when I was a teenager. There have been other manga that I've read this year that I adore, but the feeling I have for Living Room Matsunaga-san surpasses that. It's like I'm infatuated with it. The first thing I did after reading this volume was reread it. Basically, this slice of life story follows a budding age gap romance between a high school girl and a graphic designer who live together in a boarding house with 4 other tenants. In this volume, there's a lot of confessions. People confessing things to themselves, people confessing things to other people. I don't want to spoil anything, so I'll just say it's probably my favorite read of 2021 so far. For me, this manga encompasses all the things I personally love to see in manga. The tropes, the characters and their personalities, the writing, and the art. It's all perfection. I think everyone has those few manga that they just are devoted to. And for me, Living Room Matsunaga-san is one of those series. I can't begin to describe the joy I felt. I had so much serotonin and adrenaline pumping through me after reading this that I didn't get to sleep until like 4 in the morning. At the end of the volume, Iwashita sensei writes that she's been struggling with the writing of this series and has been doubting herself. She explains how thankful she is to her editor for being blunt and honest when it comes to the writing. For example, her editor pointed out that June sounded creepy at one moment in the story and it needed to be revised. It's this love and care for the characters and the story that make this series shine. You can tell so much thought was put into everything, and it's especially important for an age gap romance because one slip up can make a character like June really unlikable. Depending on the rest of the series and the ending, this could be in my top 3 favorite manga of all time. It's definitely no surprise that I'm giving this volume 5 stars, and if you haven't already, I highly recommend you give this romance a try. I think most shoujo lovers will enjoy it. You probably won't feel as strongly about it as I do, because I become a little insane when I fall this hard for a series, but it's good. And you should buy it. Now we're going to talk about a book that has been in my collection for some time, but I was waiting for the right mood to read it, and that's the seinen omnibus, I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, written by Yoru Sumino and illustrated by Izumi Kirihara. This manga destroyed me. This first-person, heartbreakingly sweet story follows a high school boy whose name is actually a spoiler, so I'll just refer to him as Unnamed Kun. Unnamed Kun is a quiet, introverted person with no desire to make friendships. He doesn't believe other people would be interested in knowing him because he sees himself as uninteresting. One day, Unnamed Kun happens upon the journal of a popular and outgoing female classmate, Sakura Yamauchi. By accident, he discovers her secret, something only her family knows. She's dying of a pancreatic disease. Over the course of the story, the two build an unusual friendship that eventually evolves into an unbreakable bond where both characters have something to learn from each other. This beautifully written story is such a powerful and profound exploration of life, death, and friendship. The plot is fairly simple and loose, with the narrative focusing on the growth of the characters as individuals and together as friends. I assumed it was going to be slightly predictable because it sounds like a story that has already been told before, but this is unique. Honestly, I had a false sense of security reading this. For the first 2/3 of the book, I thought I knew what I was getting into. As the story was progressing and I was learning about these lovable characters, watching them build their relationship and develop their chemistry, I tried to remind myself of the inevitable. The manga has a bit of an ominous tone because the first chapter of the book heavily foreshadows the ending. Nothing, I repeat, nothing could have prepared me for the last third of this book. My mind was shattered. I was sobbing so hard, I ended up with a migraine. After some meds and some water and a nap, I finished the book and the tears just wouldn't stop flowing. This is probably one of the saddest manga I've ever read, and yet it was strangely uplifting as well. I really loved the themes in this story. It's the kind of story that reminds you to appreciate the beauty of life and enjoy the happy moments because life is fleeting. It's about making meaningful connections with people and how interacting and bonding with others is an important part of living. I was very impressed with the dialogue. It was incredible and almost philosophical at times. Even if it was a short read, I feel like I've learned so much. It's a very impactful story. I thought the characters were special and well developed. I saw myself a great deal in Unnamed Kun, being a socially awkward and lifelong introvert myself. I enjoyed how Sumino sensei chose to keep him unnamed until the end, instead having people refer to him based on how he believed people viewed him. I also liked how his name was updated depending on how his relationships with people developed. For example, Sakura refers to him as introverted classmate Kun at the start of the story, but later refers to him as close Kun. As for the art, I felt like it portrayed the characters' emotions beautifully, and it was very soft and gentle throughout. I'm giving this tender, bittersweet, delicate, and emotional story 5 stars. For me, this manga is unforgettable. Much like the title of the manga itself, I Want to Eat Your Pancreas discusses important themes and lessons that anyone would appreciate, and although heart-shattering, I'm thankful to have read it and recommend you read it as well. But make sure you have tissues close by. The last manga I'm going to talk about today is volumes 7 through 9 of the seinen romance Sweat and Soap by Kentetsu Yamada. This charming and wholesome story follows Asako and Kotaro, 2 people navigating a healthy, sometimes awkward relationship built on mutual love, trust, and respect. So many wonderful things happened throughout these volumes. We finally get to meet Kotaro's family, something I've been really looking forward to. We get to watch the lovebirds celebrate their anniversary and then enjoy each other's company at the beach company getaway, which brings us to the last volume, where some stuff happens. I can't get into it too much. I don't want to spoil anything for people, but this latest installment is a very Asako heavy volume. Asako is forced to face something head on, something painful, but absolutely necessary in order for her to grow. For too long, she has relied on Kotaro to build her confidence and self-esteem. Not that there's anything wrong with loved ones supporting you, but Asako needs to learn how to love herself. She doesn't have to do it alone, but she does need to take that first step and open up. As for Kotaro, I was very proud of his choices in this volume. I think he was considerate and kind, but also firm. I'm going to give these volumes 5 stars. This volume is my favorite of the series so far, and I'm very eager to see how my number 1 manga couple manages this new conflict. And with that, we have come to the end of my September manga wrap-up. I hope I didn't sound too terrible. I was feeling crummy throughout the video, and as the video went on, I was feeling crummier and crummier, so I hope it's not too distracting. I would love to know if you've read any of these manga. Please leave your thoughts in the comment section below. If you're interested in watching more videos from me, you can check out my end card where I'll have links to my most recent videos. I hope you all have a manga-nificent day, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!